The Scouting America Distinguished Conservation Service Awards program was announced 4 years ago to encourage conservation learning by the participants and to increase public awareness about natural resource conservation. Understanding and practicing sound stewardship of natural resources and environmental protection strengthens Scouting's emphasis on respecting the outdoors. The goal of the Youth Award of this awards program is to encourage and recognize truly outstanding efforts undertaken by Scouts, Venturers, and Sea Scouts, which have contributed significantly to natural resource conservation and environmental protection. Now that 4 years have passed, we felt this is a good time to see how the program is succeeding. What better way than to talk with some youth participants who have earned or have nearly completed the Distinguished Conservation Service Award for Youth? Here's what they have to tell us.
My projects were so the first one I did was I built and installed two, they're called monofilament disposal units, but they're for fishing line and hooks. You've probably seen them around. They're basically a PVC pipe that has like a curve to the top that you can put fishing line and hooks in. And then I made my own educational sign. They're located it's called Harriman Lake Park. It's in like the foothills area of Denver. And so that was my first project. And then the second project I did is I built 11 birdhouses for Foothills Golf Course. So they're mountain bluebird houses, which is intended. I did some research, and kind of what spurred that project was we've seen a national decline in bird populations due to a lot of habitation loss. And so to provide them places to have nests and to exist is really important. So that was a part of that project. And I both did them in I did the bulk of the work in the fall to early winter of 2024. Um, and they were both really awesome projects.
Yeah, so my first project was linked with my Eagle Scout project. It is a pollinator garden outside of the Williamston Middle School, so my local middle school, right outside the library and the bus stop. So lots of people can walk by, and it's full of 50 species of native plants and flowers. Um, it has literature and signage for the school so that they can build it into their curriculum. And I've talked with the science staff and also the school board about what they wanted with this to make it as perfect as possible. So it's providing both educational for the public, the school, and also the environmental gains. My second project is a control of invasive spread at our local Williamstown Township Park. This project has a boot. I'm making two boot scrapers that go outside both the entrances of the park, as well as going through the park, the new forest that they're making, mapping out all of the invasives that they have for future cleanup of the park to make it look as beautiful as possible and as natural as possible.
So the DCSA has two projects, of course. My first project I did in 2023 in Downers Grove, Illinois, which is a little bit outside of Chicago. So that was at Lyman Woods. It's a private kind of park district owned forest preserve. And there they had a little pond on their property that was adjacent to a nearby university's parking lot and also near a bunch of residences. The problem there was that there was a lot of runoff and pollution coming from both the parking lot and those residences, and that was negatively impacting the pond, which used to be used as a habitat for some of the, and also as a water resource for the deer in the area. So for that project, what we did was, first of all, it was surrounded by invasive buckthorn. So we cleared a radius of 20 feet of the buckthorn all the way around the pond to make sure we, one, had room to work, and two, the pond wasn't getting crowded out by the trees. We then had to focus on the pollutants with the runoff. So what we ended up doing was putting surface sand filters at the main entry points of the water. So we would layer like rocks, gravel, sand, so that as the water came through, it would only go into the pond after it had been filtered. So that was the biggest part of the project, but there was also an algae problem. So we installed a pond aerator so that the water would continuously move so that algae would be less of a problem. And as the last part, we planted native plants all the way around the surface of the pond. We planted native plants around the perimeter of the pond and in the pond and all around it, just to make sure that it was really a healthy ecosystem. So the goal for this pond was to get the pollutants down and make it, once again, a viable habitat and resource. And Lyman Woods does a lot of animal restoration kind of programs. So they might use it as an amphibian habitat or a reptile habitat. And a lot of the plants that we put were there specifically so that native insects and birds could have habitat, food, or shelter near the pond. For project number 2, this was at Owassipee Scout Reservation, which is in the Muskegon County, Michigan. So I worked with the Muskegon County forester for this project. Owassipee had a huge problem with spongy moths, otherwise known as gypsy moths. And that is an invasive insect that was affecting their foliage and also affecting the general programming of Owassipee, as they tend to be a nuisance. So this project was originally intended to focus only on the spongy moths, but with the guidance of the forester, we expanded the breadth of the project to handle invasive insects in general. So we expanded to not only the spongy moth, but also the spotted lanternfly and the Asian longhorn beetle. There were a couple big parts of this project. This one was a lot about helping nature help itself. So I taught the bird study merit badge and forest fish and wildlife management merit badges at Owassipee that summer. So as a part of those badges, we would build either brush piles to support the local mammal populations that will attack these insects, or in bird study, we built nesting boxes for the black-capped chickadee, which conveniently eats and destroys the eggs, larvae, and fully grown spongy moths. So that was a lot of helping nature help itself, as I said before. We also put signs up around camp as awareness. So there were signs on the Asian longhorn beetle and spotted lanternfly saying, if you see it in any of their stages, please take a picture, try to capture it, and send it to this hotline or send it to this website. And there were QR codes and phone numbers listed so people could report them, because Michigan is worried about having these invasive insects, which haven't quite made their way there yet, but they're worried about having them all the way up there in Muskegon, and they want to stay ahead of the game, and Scouts can be a good resource for that. And then there were also signs for the spongy moth, encouraging campers to destroy them in all stages of their life, as they are invasive insects. So those were my 2 projects.
So I learned this from my mom, who works with Bill Bowerman, part of this organization, um, and working with Eagle and Bald Eagle Project. And she came home and said that this an amazing project, and I had already wanted to do a large Eagle Scout project, so I thought this would be extend the benefit of this. It would stand for a long time, education, provide a environmental benefit, and also with both my parents as environmentalists, it sounded something that I really wanted to do.
So when I was doing my Eagle project, it was a pollinator garden. My older brother's friend had previously done the William T. Hornaday Award, which was like the predecessor to the DCSA. And he encouraged me to pursue that award as well, because my Eagle project would have fit within that range. So I ended up getting in contact with my council conservation committee. And by that point, I was a little too far into my Eagle project. But I decided I wanted to do the conservation award anyways. So I did 2 additional projects to earn the award.
I originally learned about it from my mom, who was just looking at conservation awards because she knew I liked the environment, and she just ended up stumbling on that one, did some more research and told me about it, and I agreed to try and do it.
Heard about it through a couple different people. I think the first time I heard about it was at National Jamboree in 2023. And I was just talking to somebody and they mentioned it, and I got a pamphlet. And then my mom heard about it too. And she was like, oh, like you should do this. And so, kind of through the grapevine of just people mentioning it, I heard about it.
What made me want to pursue it was my love for the environment, and I knew that would help me get into my dream school for college for fisheries and wildlife, and it just looked like a lot of fun and a good challenge to do.
I've had a lot of engagement within conservation work for a long time before I decided to do the project, and I saw it and was like, that seems like a really cool thing to do. Like, um, it was definitely a way to support my community, and it just sounded like a lot of fun. Um, and it just was cool, and I liked the merit badges that it encouraged me to do, and a lot of connections that it helped me form in the end were awesome.
So for my pollinator garden at the middle school project, um, I had just graduated out of middle school. I was in the early years of high school, and I look back trying to figure out what an Eagle project would be. And I saw that um, the middle school used to have a garden, and it decayed relatively quick. It was just a rock circle at that point. So I reached out to the school board and asked if I could change that, if I could help make that beautiful again, add some value to it. And they said that they would like a new one instead. So I ended up building a new 500 square foot garden outside of the library, the science rooms, and the bus stop. And then for my other project, the Control of an Invasive, the Boot Scraper project, I was with scouts going to all the parks, all the trails that we go to, seeing the boot brush stations outside and the signage that goes with it. That inspired me to ask my park, which didn't have any boot scrapers or anything to help teach people about invasive spread, if they wanted this. So I talked with them. They loved the idea, and they had me make up 2 of them to put at either entrance.
Again, tying back into my Eagle project, I selected the first project because it was at the same location as my Eagle project. I had an interest in soil and water conservation at the time, and I reached out to my beneficiary saying, hey, I know you guys have wetlands, you have multiple ponds on the property. Is there any soil and water conservation adjacent project that I can help you guys with? And they were like, we have this pond in our property. It's not in great condition. We don't really know what to do with it. you can have at it if you want. And I thought that'd be a really interesting project. I went and looked at the site and I was like, all right, this looks like something I want to pursue. So I ended up doing that for project number one. For project number two, I was working at a Wasapie that summer anyways, and I had been a camper for some previous years, and those gypsy moths were really quite annoying. So I had a personal vendetta against them, but they were also invasive insects. So I talked to some of the people at Owassapee about it, and then I ended up reaching out to the Muskegon County Conservation Department, where I talked to their forester, and we ended up coming together to devise an idea for a project that would benefit Owassapee and conservation in general.
Um, I originally selected my first project for the habitat by driving over to Isaac Walton. I forgot what I was going there for, but I remember looking off to the side of the road and I saw a giant like milkweed butterfly habitat. And that just gave me the idea to do something similar to that. For the Christmas tree one, I actually saw it in a magazine that my mom showed me, saying that looks pretty cool. For Christmas trees tied to cinder blocks, throwing into a pond for fish.
I had a hard time with definitely like time management. I started the project, I started doing the whole process of this award. Um, what I would consider a little like later than I would have hoped. And so I ended up doing a lot of merit badges very back to back, and I had a lot of um I had to stay really on top of my communication. I had to be very punctual. I had to be um very efficient about things, and that was definitely a challenge to the whole process of it. Just was like very like mattered when I started things, when I did things, and so I had to be really on top of it.
The biggest challenge with my projects was probably convincing my town of Poolsville to give me the money to actually afford all the projects because I was around 15 or 16 at the time. I didn't have any money myself. And then probably doing all the paperwork and setting things up.
My biggest challenge would be the timing and the weather. Starting both my projects in late summer, early fall, and running into winter, making it so I couldn't plant my plants, my flowers, or hammer in the signs that I needed. Really slowed down my project.
So there were two primary challenges in executing the project. Number one was bureaucracy when it came to Owassapee. The nice thing about the DCSA is that your projects can benefit Scouting America properties. The one thing about that is that Scouting America properties, especially ones like Owassapee, which is a really, really old, established 1911 camp, is that there's a lot of hoops to jump through in order to get approvals to actually make changes to the land, put up signs, and change the merit badge program or get some programming approved so that we can do it during the week with the participants. So first I had to get approval from my nature area director, being like, hey, can I incorporate this as a part of my project? Then from the camp director to make sure it's okay with him in general. Then from the commissioner to make sure it's okay to put the signs up. So it really takes some perseverance and grit in the bureaucracy there. The second thing is research. With conservation projects, a lot of the bulk of the work of the project is figuring out what to do. You have identified a problem. The real challenge comes in knowing what you're going to do to tackle that problem. And you can't just be like, how do I restore a pond? Type it into Google and have it give you a solution. You've got to go through, explore a bunch of different strategies, see how it's been implemented before, and decide what's going to be most economical, effective, and feasible for you to do. So that was another challenge.
My favorite memory from the experience was tying the cinder blocks to the Christmas trees with metal wire with my friends from my hockey team who decided to come down and help me with it. We sat there in the pouring rain for 3 to 4 hours, just talking to each other, making jokes, having fun. And then at the end, we ended up just throwing them in the pond from a boat.
So there's this adult that helps out with my home troop, Mr. Langanke, and he came to all three of my project work dates, and he was an amazing support throughout this. And one thing that he helped me with that was just really cool to feel this like the support from my community that I've poured a lot of effort into, and I'm very involved in my troop. And Mr. Langanke was super encouraging, and he really helped me figure out how to lead more confidently. I've done a lot of leadership, and he definitely was a huge help in figuring out, like, oh, how do I be confident about decisions when I don't necessarily know everything about what I'm doing? Like, I'm not like a big construction person, that kind of thing. So, like, a lot of things were like a learning process, and so to be confident within that learning process was definitely something that was really amazing to have learned from a lot of people who have supported me for a long time.
There were a couple of good memories from the project. The first one that jumps out to me is during the pond project, we had to get in the pond. And one of my volunteers, throughout the entire week that we were doing the project, he kept asking, "Can I please get in the water? Can I please get in the water?" And finally, it was time to tell him, "Yes, you can get in the water today." So we had to go, both of us went into the pond. We ended up having to pull out an entire log. It was pretty much a whole tree from the pond, just to get that out of the way. So that was a fun memory in that sense. But something that really has stuck with me is the amount of people that were interested in conservation, interested in my projects, interested in the award after doing this. I used my network through the Order of the Arrow, through my troop, through my crew to recruit people for these projects. And as I did that, they were like, "I thought you were already Eagle. Why are you doing a project like this?" And then I got to tell them about the DCSA. And from that, a lot of people have decided that they want to start work on it, or they became interested in it, or just generally into conservation programs in Scouting America.
My favorite memory from building my projects was when I was working on my distinguished or for my middle school pollinator garden. This project was right after I came back from a big high adventure trip. We went to Isle Royale, and the small group of scouts that I hiked with came to one of my work days right after we got back from IRL, and being able to talk with all of them about that experience, and then also having fun with them, building and teaching them how to set up the garden was really fun.
I think the most important thing to share about DCSA projects in general, my project too, is that patience is key in doing conservation projects. They're not something that you can just get done. Oh, I want to get this done in the next few months, even the next year. You're going to need quite some time to do two full, worthy, effective conservation projects. Like I said, research is a huge part of the process. So you need to take time to make sure you're carefully considering all your options, but then actually seeing the change and making an impact, or knowing that you made an impact, also takes time. It's not going to be, I put up a couple birdhouses, all the moths have disappeared from the forest. It's not going to be, I put in the sand filters yesterday, I'm going to go check today, and all the pollutants are gone. No, it's we put in the sand filters. I came back 4 months later, and I collected a water sample, had it sent for testing, and I saw the levels slowly go down over time. So patience is incredibly important in all types of conservation projects, and that was something important for both of them.
Um, I think the most important thing would be um how involved it got me in conservation work is I've been like now in college, I'm studying environment sustainability, and I'm in a lot of these classes that are like, oh, like change makes a big difference, getting involved, like engagement is super important to like preserving the environment and helping with all of our conservation efforts. And to be able to be like, yeah, like, oh, I've done my own conservation work, and like I've gotten my hands dirty, I've gotten involved, I've been in the planning process, I've done the communications, I've found the work, I've done the research. Like to have been a part of that whole process has been very beneficial to figuring out what I want to do. But I think it's so important to be engaged. And I think that's something that's just super important when it comes to conservation work as a whole, is getting your hands dirty and getting engaged is super important.
Um, the most important thing I would probably want to share is I know the paperwork seems like a lot, but commit to it don't give up on it.
Yes, absolutely. Um, I I haven't been back to check on my projects just yet, but in a while, but I think like a part of the difference I made was getting younger scouts involved and showing them like, hey, like this is possible, like this is doable. This exists, like this award is a real thing. Um, as I think, yeah.
I do feel like my project has made a difference. There's a lot of people in Poolsville who like going outside, walking around, fishing, and them being able to do that and having something to look at, like the monarch butterfly garden or habitat in the middle of town, makes me think that I really affected someone's day by them walking by and looking at it.
Yes, it was very rewarding because it was a lot of work, a lot of effort. It would have been almost disappointing if absolutely no progress had been made. So it was very reassuring, very rewarding to see those numbers go down. Or in the case of my second project with the invasive insects, very rewarding to see kids be genuinely excited about making a nesting box because it's not just about the bird, but it's also about getting rid of those annoying insects that are all around their camp. Or for those that are slightly older, it's less about the insects and more about just generally being able to help the environment in more than just one way and learning about the interconnectedness of everything in conservation.
I would say that my projects have made a difference. Yeah, for my first project, the pollinator garden, seeing how the empty field of grass by the school transformed from very little value to an extreme amount of value, both in the way it looks for the school, for the providing material for the science classes, and then also for the environment itself. And for my other project, the value that that brings is allowing the park to stay as healthy as possible, to stay as natural as possible.
My best advice would be ready to commit a lot of time into this if you have after school activities like sports or other hobbies, because it is going to be a lot of work.
Start as early as you can. Um, it's it's a lot of work and it's worth it, but the more time you give yourself, the easier it is. Because I did the bulk of the project during my junior and senior year of high school, which was a very busy time for me. And so to have done all of that during that time it would have been easier if I could have spread it out a little bit more. Um, but I don't. I think it's still doable even if you are doing it your junior, senior year of high school. Like, you shouldn't let that stop you, but starting early is helpful.
I would say the best piece of advice that I could give would be to start it at a time that you know you could finish it in a good chunk of time. I know because I came across winter being a big obstacle. Um, and also, there's also the threat of timing out of scouts. So do it with enough time to make a good quality project that everybody is proud of.
I think I already mentioned patience. Patience is very important in earning the DCSA, but another thing is passion. So I guess there's patience and passion. You can't do the DCSA because you're like, I want to check off a box, or I think this will look good on an application. You have to do the DCSA if you're genuinely, thoroughly interested in conservation, or at least in the subfields that you decide. For my soil and water conservation project, it's not that I became interested in soil and water conservation after finding out about the project or after doing the project, but it's that I was interested in it and then I pursued a project related to that. And that is a lot of the intention of the DCSA, is to have scouts who are interested in something go and get experience and exposure to that field. So you really have to want to do these projects. It is a lot about intrinsic motivation because sure, the metal, the knot, they're cool. But what's even cooler and really rewarding to see is the impact that you've made and to have these changes. That one of the things it says in the workbook, you can come back in 20 years, point at that and say, I did that. And that's like the beauty of a DCSA project. And that's why you really have to be passionate about it in order to pursue.
It is a really cool process to be a part of. And I think one of the best things that's happened out of it is I've gotten a lot of connections through doing this project of people I've talked to, people I've met, and through all these connections, I've ended up in a really cool space, and I have a lot of connections that have benefited me scholarship wise, applying to college, and all of those kind of things that it definitely made a big difference for.